When we're trying to reduce a behavior, why is it that methods where we're having to wait or somehow introducing a pause or what I would call like a speed bump, why do those tend to be more effective in the long run as opposed to methods that are just a straight up block, right? So you can think about like, blocking software, for example, where, it just totally denies access. So, but what is it about this pause, this wait quality that has kind of added benefits that can make a more effective change? So, welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about being human and invite you, the listener, to become more present to yourself, your relationships, and your life. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question for me, I would love to hear that from you. You can send that to me anonymously at asksean.org. So this is a follow-up on actually a recent video I did. It's gonna overlap a bit. In that video, I was talking about a bit about the benefits of waiting more broadly, and I touched actually some on blocking software. I've recently come across a piece of software called ScreenZen, which I'll put a link to in the description. And one of the things I'm really liking about this is that it does have this pause, wait, or what I would call a speed bump functionality, where we can configure, a different time, depending on what, you can block lots of different things, apps and websites and stuff like that. And you can set different times of day to have different kinds of blocking, different lengths of time to block. But yeah, you can configure how long do you have to wait, right? So for me, one of the key things that I've been working on is I'm always trying to really protect my mornings and my evenings. And while I've grown a lot in that, and it's a lot better than it used to be, I'm still trying to, kind of clean that area out, if you will. And so this, this software allows me to configure it such that for a certain window of the morning and in the evenings, I make the wait time much longer for certain things. Or in some cases, I put a wait time there where I don't have a wait time during the daytime because it's something that I do want to be able to access quickly during the day. And yeah, I've been finding it really effective. And so I've been having conversations about this idea with clients and kind of different types of things that people struggle with. And yeah, so I just felt like maybe I had some additional thoughts I could offer, kind of building on what I talk about in that other video, which I'll try to remember to, put that video up on the screen somehow, and of course put a link to it in the description and whatnot. So yeah, what is it about? What is it about this that makes it so effective, about this kind of this waiting? And so I think part of what's going to make it helpful to kind of unpack this is actually to explore what are some of the limitations of just doing a straight up block of something. So this is, blocking software has been around a long, long time. I come from a Christian context, and super common in Christian circles that there's a value on trying to not engage with pornography, right? That's kind of in terms of part of Christian sexual ethics. Would see that as harmful to oneself, harmful to women, and whatnot. And of course, there's, non-religious reasons, non-religious contexts that would share that view as well. And also there's, contexts in our current culture that, would not see anything wrong with porn and whatnot. So I'm not interested in getting into the weeds of all of that and debating one way or the other at the moment. That's not the point of this video. But my point there is just that, I've known about blocking software a long time, right? Both in my own life and my own journey in terms of working to abstain from engaging with pornography, and just conversations with so many men over the years, friends, and then of course clients who, where that's a big struggle. And so it's been a really common thing, right? That, this idea of like, okay, well, you just get the right blocking software and so that you can't misbehave. And I've just never been persuaded that that was a great plan or a great strategy. I've always felt just intuitively kind of suspicious of that. Not because I was looking for, ways to misbehave or whatever, but it just never struck me as like a real solution. Um, I do think there's a place for total full blocking of things in life. Like if you've got a chemical addiction, going through detox is a really important and necessary thing, right? And that's where you need to be able to not have physical access to your particular substance, right? So there absolutely is a place for full-on blocks. I'm not saying they're inherently bad. I just want us to reflect a little bit about what are the limitations of this, right? Whatever the thing is, whether it's blocking software to do with, porn or something, or blocking to do with other things, or, like the stuff I've been thinking about here recently, like I don't want to be on my email at certain times of day, right? I don't want to be on Instagram at certain times of day. There is very much times where I do need to be on email, and that's important and it's useful and it's part of how I, am able to do good in the world, to communicate with people and schedule clients and all that kind of thing, right? And and Instagram has its good uses, right? So, but it's like, yeah, wanting to be able to set limits on those things. Yeah, so one of the big weaknesses of a total block, right? So we're not doing any kind of wait time at all, uh, is that you're not doing any muscle building there, right? I mean, to use like, the being in rehab and sort of, detox kind of situation, right? Like that's necessary, you're being limited by your environment where you cannot access something that's going to harm you, that you're going to misbehave with, that you're going to misuse. But that in of itself doesn't mean you're building emotional muscles. That's not the same thing as getting stronger, And so, and one of the thing I've observed over the years, right, in like thinking of friends who've used blocking software that were just like a total block, thinking about like pornography, right, or in my work with clients who again and again would, they often would come to me because they'd been using blocking software and it really wasn't producing change, right? And they were distraught about that because they're, wanting to they have certain moral convictions that they're not living up to. And so, yeah, it's just the thing I've observed is that it doesn't help us build muscles, And so as soon as you take away the block, or if you figure out a workaround, then you're just back to the same old thing, right? Like there's nothing new is happening in the person, in the character, right? That's the thing, right? So helpful. Sometimes we need that level of block, right, to be able to create the space to do some muscle building. So there is a place for that, right? Absolutely. And I'm not going to cover all the permutations of things in this video. There would be 1,000 different kinds of scenarios we could explore. If you have questions that are coming up of like, what about this? What about that? Like, please send them in, because I'd love to respond to more specifics in terms of how to think wisely about using blocks. And, what do you do then with that space it creates, right? How do you take advantage of that in a good way and do some muscle building, right? So this video, I more so want to think about, okay, what are some of the limitations of like a straight up blocking, and why is systems, methods where you have a pause, where you have a wait, what are the benefits that provides? Right. So yeah. So like I said, there's wait, I feel like I missed a thought. Yeah. So another little thought is just that, like, because we're not, it doesn't, it's not an automatic that we're growing if we're using a block, and part of that too is that it doesn't automatically help us shift states of being. And so if we're in a state of being where I'm wanting to misbehave and whatever my thing is, right, whether it's getting on email when I don't need to fucking be on email, right, or if someone's wanting to engage with material online that their moral convictions feel like is not good for them. That could be a lot of different things these days, not just pornography. Watching the news, perhaps. But yeah, whatever the thing may be, um, when we don't have any kind of weight in there, when it's just a straight up block, it's real easy to just to psychologically just flit onto the next thing, right? In which case nothing new has happened, you know? It's just like, okay, I couldn't misbehave in this way, so I'm just going to misbehave in this way instead, right? Like, okay, I couldn't distract myself with Instagram, so now I'm on YouTube, or like it. And so then, well, okay, well, you block YouTube too. But I mean, and you can keep doing blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks, but we want to create the space to like start to reflect, right? Which a block doesn't automatically do. It can do if you work at it, but that takes a bit more effort. So again, I think blocks, they have their purpose, but I think they're not a great first line of defense. They're when they're really necessary, you should really use them, right? Again, the detox analogy. So I'm not saying it's bad to use them, but so yeah, so that's one aspect, is that you just kind of keep flitting from thing to thing. You haven't shifted mental states at all, and so nothing new is happening. So another danger with blocks is that it can just be too big of a bite. Like, so when a block isn't truly necessary, right? Again, thinking especially like life-threatening kinds of things, with chemical dependence issues, chemical addiction issues. When it's not strictly necessary, our psyche can be really prone to rebel. And so thinking about like blocking apps, for example, what this ends up turning into is that you just end up uninstalling the blocking software. You get tired of that severe of a limit, and you just give up, right? And so then, well, that's not effective, right? Like, and then we tend to beat ourselves up. Well, okay, well, I didn't have the willpower to stay with it and keep using it, right? So it's like I think it's like part of the problem is it can be out of sync with where we're actually at. The reality is, if we're trying to use some kind of software or some sort of blocking method, we're engaging in a behavior that we think is problematic. We're engaging in something that we think is not good for us, that we need to either reduce or at least limit. Limit entirely. I get that backwards, but yeah. We're somehow wanting to change. Like we want to be doing less of this, not more, whether the goal is total abstinence, of the thing, or more so like, with my email, where it's like, I want to be using it more strategically and thoughtfully. And there's times where I don't want to be using it at all, or I want the bar to be very high on using it. Right. So yeah, when it's a total block, I think that has the potential to provoke a rebellion in us where we just give up. And so then that's the end result, is that, that's not effective. Whereas I feel like using a delay, it's a way of telling the truth. The reality is I do want to misbehave here, but I also don't. And so I'm going to put this delay in, and we're going to be talking mostly here in software ways, because lends itself really well actually to this kind of intervention. So I put this delay in as a way of acknowledging these dual realities about my psyche right now. That a part of me wants to go to this thing that I don't think is great for me, whether it's something I consider objectively bad, or it's just this is not the right time or not the right quantity, whatever the case may be. Versus, or not versus, but and alongside that, like, I forgot which one I said. Anyways, let's try again. So I'm wanting to curb this, and the reality is I still want to do it. I'm wanting to do this thing that I do think is not great for me, and I'm trying to shift it. So I think it just feels more nuanced. It feels more realistic. It feels more honest about where we are, right? And so I think, I don't know, something about that. Yeah, I think just it seems like seems to be more effective, and I'll say some more things about that. Kind of, because part of the idea here is we're trying to make it more costly, right? It's like I'm not going to stop myself entirely from doing whatever the thing is I'm trying to reduce, but I'm trying to make it more costly. I'm trying to get myself to register that, like, hey, this isn't actually working great for me, right? We're trying to help this shift. Now, just a side note, you can, thinking about that making it more costly angle, like There are ways of doing this after the fact, right? So like, after I've, acted out with whatever kind of behavior that I'm trying to reduce, you can explore having basically consequences, right? Okay, like I'm going to make an agreement with myself that if I act out in this way, or if I exceed the limit of what I said I would do, I said I would only do 10 minutes of Instagram, and then it's, 30 minutes later, right? I can make an agreement with myself that, then, all right, I gotta, whatever, wash the tub or something, or clean the floor, whatever. The point here is, there's lots more because we said about this. This is just a super little touching on this. The point is to try to make it costly so that will register in me that, like, hey, I would like to be thinking about this ahead of time, right? So those can be really useful interventions. They're tricky. It's really easy to do them poorly. One of the dangers is it's really easy to do that in a shaming way, where you're just beating yourself up. So you're trying to shame yourself into change, which doesn't work in the long run. It might get you a little mileage for a short time, but it doesn't produce lasting, deep change. So it's really easy to fall into that, which is problematic. There's a real skill in learning how to dial in an effective consequence, right? Like, the point isn't to be punishing. It's not to be shaming. It's to try to make it costly, because we're trying to help ourselves wake up. It's like, I'm on an autopilot and I'm misusing a thing, right? And I'm trying to help myself remember, help my psyche, especially that part of me that is misbehaving, remember that, like, oh yeah, last time I did that, then I like had to, scrub the whole tub, and that sucked. I don't know, because I hate scrubbing the tub. Like maybe I won't do it, or maybe I'll wait a little bit, or whatever, right? Like, we're trying to increase some awakeness to things. So lots more it could be said there. That's something I've used. I've used it a lot in my own life. I've used that with clients over the years. It can be very effective. It's a really useful skill if you can cultivate the skill. But a lot of ways to get off track in terms of doing trying to do effective consequences with oneself. So yeah, that's an aside. If you have questions about that, send those in. Would be happy to field those. So, part of what's cool about when we're creating this weighting, right? This pause, this speed bump, is that there's work that's happening in that waiting period. This is part of where it is intrinsically different from a straight up block. Again, blocking full straight up block is not bad. It just has certain limitations, right? So let's explore kind of what are some of the ways that we're working in the midst of the waiting. So one of the things is that we're interrupting the normal pattern, like just by having a wait, like that's an interruption. The normal pattern is like, oh, I'm, feeling whatever feeling, and I'm just going to like get on Instagram and, browse mindlessly or something, right? There's an automaticness to that. The wait, it's like putting a stick in the spokes of a bicycle wheel, right? It's like, what the heck just happened? Right? Like, I can't just keep churning on autopilot. Like, it forces me to pause. And we're doing this while the problem pattern is still online. That's part of what's really cool about this, right? Because when we're trying to make changes, there's these technical terms about state specific processing, right? Like, so we have different states of being, and you can talk about like, oh yeah, I usually feel da 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 da, but unless you access that state of being and make changes while you're accessing it, like it's really hard to like actually have something stick. So here, we know the state is active because like I'm like, I'm holding my phone waiting for Instagram to load, waiting the 3 minutes, or whatever depending on the time of day, whatever the length of time is I have set, right? Like, so that is active. And now I'm introducing into that state of being like something different. And so what's interesting about where, we're in the digital space with this, right? There's challenges in terms of how do we apply this in the physical world, which I'll talk some about later. But like with using something like ScreenZen, like, I mean, I have it set for several minutes, like for something like Instagram, or if it's in the mornings, right, or evenings with my email. And so I can't do anything else because, if I let my screen time out, then the timer's going to start over, right? There's nothing for me to do. I can't switch apps, right? The timer's going to start over. So I'm just sitting there holding my phone, nothing to do, nothing to read, right? Like, so that's a really interesting experience, right? Because I had that like, oh, I am going to habitually check. And then, the brakes have been put on, but I'm in this in between. And so I think this creates opportunity for a bit of like shifting to happen, just even in this, right? Because I'm kind of in this, and I mentioned this in the other video, like it's almost a tiny bit meditative, like I have, tapping my screen every so often just to keep the screen awake, because while I'm waiting for the timer to run down, so that I can use the app. And so by the time, if I decide even to keep going, because there can be legit reasons I need or want to get on. But by the time I get there, like I've gotten to practice shifting from that fast, like, habitual mode to a calmer mode potentially, right? Like it's that's one of the possibilities here of what might happen, right? Like and for me, I'm just being with my breathing, like I'm trying to enjoy the relaxation, right? Now, we're all in different places on our journey, so I'm going to talk about there's some other things that can come up here too. This may not be relaxing for you, and that's okay too. It would not have been for me either at certain points in my journey. And this really gets me to kind of, yeah, then to more of that thought. So we're also creating space to feel uncomfortable, like, and that is a very real possibility, is that, of course, there's the discomfort of waiting, and if we're not practiced at waiting at all, where there's an impatience and just like, I don't want to have to wait, right? So that can be uncomfortable. But there's also, and this is the more difficult part, is that if we are engaging in this behavior, whatever this problem behavior is, because we're asking it to rescue us from some certain feelings, some certain emotions, then those might start to come up while we're waiting. And that will be hard. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. That will be hard. It will be uncomfortable. And yet, don't we want that to actually truly get better? Because like just going and engaging in the problem behavior, asking it to rescue us from an emotion, that's not a long-term solution, right? Like that doesn't really work. Like that's the essence of like how you get addicted, right? It's much better if we can start to feel the uncomfortable feelings. Now, admittedly, depending on, what kinds of feelings are coming up for you, like you may need some help with that, right? Like you may need to find somebody like me, right, who can accompany you on being with those feelings. I have needed that for a good chunk of my life, right? And there's a certain sense in which we always need that. Like whether or not it's formal counseling or not, we need other humans. We're not meant to bear life alone. Like it's really challenging being human. It's beautiful, but it's really challenging. And so we need each other. Like we definitely need each other. And so, I have had my own counselors who have been life-changing for me. I have mentors. I have close friends. I have lots of relationships that I have cultivated over decades, right? Because I need help, because I cannot do this life alone, and you cannot do it alone. And so, as you're having uncomfortable feelings come up because you're realizing like, oh shit, like I've been asking, whatever this thing is, going to this website or watching cat videos or checking my email or checking the news, whatever the thing is, I've been asking it to like rescue me from some difficult emotions, and, shit, these are freaking me out. Like you need to find people who can be with you in that, who aren't afraid of those emotions, who have done the hard, scary work in their own life such that they have the capacity to be there with you and to accompany you and help you learn to be with and to care for and to shepherd those feelings. So that's lots more can be said about that, of course. But this is really crucial, right? Like, because we want real change. We don't want to just keep pretending. We don't want to just keep kicking the can down the road, because it doesn't work in the long run. We want, we want to actually become more human, we want to get better. We want to be well. We want to actually live our lives, right? Or as I'm fond of saying, learning to bear the burden and the beauty of this life that we've been given, right? So, kind of final thing on, what are some of the things that waiting does for us? Kind of implicit in everything I've been saying is that it helps us become more present. It creates the space in which we might become more present, right? I mean, that's another way of saying some of what we've already been saying here and exploring here together is, can I actually be in this moment? Can I develop the capacity to start to be here now, right? I think that's a title of a Ram Dass book. I think I have that book. Anyways, but yeah, be here now. So let's talk a little bit, just a tiny bit about kind of non-digital situations. So yeah, because that's harder. And I'm not going to go super into this because this conversation would benefit from more specifics. And I just didn't have time to think real hard about pulling up in my memory like super specific examples from the physical world. But there's a million things that we could talk about here. And so, as I'm talking about this, if you're thinking of like, oh, what about this situation or that situation, please send in an anonymous question, and I would love to tackle that. Because yeah, lots more that could be said than what I'm going to get to. So one of my thoughts is that I would still say actually explore this in the digital world first, because we're in a digital time in history, right? And so you undoubtedly have ways in which you wish your behavior with technology was better. And so because we have apps like ScreenZen, I mean, I'm making a big plug for them because they're the one that I'm aware of that allows the pause, right? Most of the apps because I did some looking at different ones, and a lot of them don't have that, which is perplexing to me. Most of them are just straight up block. So there probably are, hopefully, some others that have pauses. But ScreenZen is one of the main ones that I know of, and so I'm giving them a plug for that reason. But find whatever works for you. But at any rate, my point here is that building a muscle, practicing waiting in the digital realm, that translates to the physical realm, right? So start building muscles where you can, like it is going to be more complicated and more tricky to figure out how to build speed bumps, right? Around physical things you're trying to limit in terms of physical behaviors, stuff in the tangible world. So it's not impossible. It is definitely doable, but it's going to require more work and in some ways more ability. And so you want to be building muscles wherever you can. And so, capitalize on, software like ScreenZen to take advantage of that, to get the benefit of that, in terms of building those muscles. And then just the general principle, in terms of when we're trying to do this in the physical world is you're trying to figure out, how do I make it longer? If there's a thing in the tangible world or, whatever the behavior is, right? And I'm trying to reduce the behavior. How do I make it more costly? How do I introduce speed bumps? How do I slow down, ideally, my approach to it? Or if I can't do that, how do I make it costly on the back end, right? How do I add time, like I've got to do, whatever, afterwards. Again, in a non-shaming way. So yeah, it's very much about how do I make it longer? How to make it take more time? How do I increase the effort? All of this is, again, to try to interrupt the automaticness, and to try to create space to start to feel things and to reflect and to kind of be like, is this really what I want to be doing? Is this like, yeah, is this really what I want to choose? So yeah, lots more could be said there. So yeah, winding down. I hope this has kind of provoked some thoughts, some ideas in you. Be thinking about where are you needing some speed bumps? in your life, right? Where are you needing that prompt, that restriction, that like where you have to slow down, right? Where you've got to wait a bit, and yeah, just figure out, be pondering where can you install those? What does that look like? Whether that's using software in the digital realm, whether that's getting creative in the physical realm. Again, tons of different examples we could get into there in terms of but they're really the devil's in the details, as they say. So I would love to hear your questions, your stories around, okay, I'm trying to limit this behavior in the real world. Can't use an app because it doesn't involve technology. What are ways I could potentially be setting some limits on myself here? How would I go about that? How would I introduce these pauses, these waits, these speed bumps? Yeah, I would love to get to help you with that. So yeah, waiting is not the enemy. Waiting is a gift. I talked about that in the other video. It really it can be really so helpful to us. And so yeah, be exploring, where can you utilize a wait as opposed to a full block, especially if you've been exploring, kind of full block kinds of things and you're not finding it effective. You might want to experiment with, well, what would happen if I made it a wait, where I don't totally deny myself from doing the thing. And this includes, honestly, I would say this, even if it's like, say it's like pornography and you have, significant moral convictions about like, I don't want to be doing this. I feel, really yucky emotionally about it. Like, I'm not trying to say you need to feel good about a thing you don't feel good about. But if you're engaging in the thing anyway, like, let's start by just introducing a wait. Can you sustain that change? I guess that's part of the takeaway I want to leave you with is, look, I mean, yeah, big picture, you want to make all of these significant changes, but where can we start, right? That's part of the thing. What can we realistically sustain? Because if you're engaging in a behavior that again, including things where you have like, it really bothers you ethically, morally, it is still a win in the near term if you're waiting longer before you engage in that. Now, that's not the stopping point, right? We want to still keep working on like what's going on with this, helping you grow and heal so that you're not engaging in a thing you don't want to be engaging in, you're not engaging in it at all. But even there's real value in that wait. That's still introducing a change. And so like we want to gain ground wherever we can, right? And so if you're able to, introduce a wait and you're able to actually start to sustain that, that's something new. That's like muscle building is happening and you can build on that, right? And so, yeah, like really look for where's the small wins, and I know it can be a lot harder when, it's hitting moral categories, for us. And there, it brings up all the shame stuff. And so, that's again, we're having somebody to work with us, help us with the shame battle, because that feeds into this in all sorts of ways. It's a big part of addictive cycles. And so that's actually got to be a really critical part of the work, right? Is learning how to do battle with our shame. So we can actually create the space in which to do the hard work of growth and learning and change. So, yeah, so it's, lots more I could say. But just, yeah, I want to encourage you to like, even with those things, explore using the weight. Even though I know you're like, but I don't want to be doing anything at all. It's like, I know, but it sounds like you're doing it anyway. So waiting to do it would be an improvement, right? Like that would be better than what's happening right now, which is no waiting and you're still doing the whatever the thing is that you don't want to be doing. So let's see if can you start to wait a little bit. And then can you wait a bit longer? And then, and then in that space, can we start to deal with all the emotions that are fueling your wanting to act out, right? That's going to be so huge to like changing these kinds of patterns. I mean, that's a massive thing in terms of something like pornography, because it's always about deeper things than, whatever it is that one's looking at. So anyway, yeah, take the small wins, and find people that you can be talking to about this stuff, right? Whether that's a counselor or a friend or whatever, depending on the intensity of what's going on with you. But yeah, we're not meant to do this alone. So, well, until next time, and peace be with you.